Hi and welcome. In this section, I will show you how to perform the initial setup for the Pfsense boxes. We will start with the BGP Pfsense, and in order to access it, I will have to use a VNC console. If you have a physical appliance, you should use a console cable and connect to the console. In my case, I am running it in GNS3. And I will have to use the VNC console, which will basically do the same thing. So my BGP Pfsense is, I should find it somewhere. So my BGP Pfsense is this one, and it has the port of 5903. So I'll go to the VNC console and connect to the 5903 port. So what we have LAN and WAN interfaces. So the first thing to do, we will assign the interfaces. And our WAN interface will be EM3, and in Pfsenses, the WAN interface basically is the interface which will connect to the external world. So I don't want to set up any VLANs right now, and I want my WAN interface to be EM3. Also, now I should choose a LAN interface. It doesn't matter which LAN interface I choose now, because I will need to have 1, 2, 3, 4 LAN interfaces. So for now, I will choose EM0 as the LAN interface, and I will choose the optional interface, which will be EM1, EM2, and EM4. When I finished, I should click enter, and this is how my interfaces will look like. Now we'll have to wait till the interfaces are being refreshed and added to the device. It should take a few moments, and it will be done. Okay, now I have added the interfaces, and as you can see, my WAN interface already received an address via DHCP. What I want to do is I want to go to set interfaces IP addresses by pressing 2, and I want to modify my WAN interface. And I don't want to use DHCP, and I will use the IP address which we agreed that we'll use. It's 192.168.0.254.24. This is this IP address. Press enter, enter. Don't want DHCP, don't want IPv6, and I will keep HTTPS as my web configuration. Okay, now I have the IP address configured for the WAN interface, and by default my LAN interface will have the IP address of 192.168.1.1, which meaning the EM0 or this interface will have this IP address. I will leave these interfaces as they are because I want to access the web GUI of the BGP Pfsense, and I want to do some initial configuration. For that, I will open a web page and 192.168.0.254, and as you can see, nothing will happen, and I am not able to log into the Pfsense because I'm not accessing it via a LAN interface. So what I'm going to do is I will go to the shell and type pfctl-d, which will deactivate the firewall on the Pfsense. So after doing that, I should be able to access the Pfsense web GUI. The default username is admin and the password is pfsense. So it will prompt me to do the initial configuration. So the host name is BGP. I will use the DNS server as the Google servers. I left it like that. Next. So for the WAN interface, we'll have already configured the IP address, and I will leave them like I configured them from the CLI. But I also will deactivate these two knobs, which will block Bogon networks and block RFC 1918 networks, which you can find the list of these networks by consulting the RFC 1918 online. Also the LAN address, I will remove this IP because I don't need it now, but when you perform your initial setup, you can choose whatever address you want to use for the LAN interface. Or for now, I will leave it like that, and it will prompt also for me to use another password. So I'll use pfsense now, pfsense1. Let's save it and let's reload the. Okay, now we have done the initial configuration and we have our interfaces added here. But there are some things that we'll need to do when performing the initial configuration. First of all, we'll go to the firewall, to the rules, and as you can see, the web page is blocked now. So I will type again pfctl-d to disable the firewall and go to the firewall rules. As you can see, we don't have any rule for the WAN interface, so which means that all the traffic will be blocked by default. So we'll have to add another temporary rule which will not cut us the access from the web GUI. It will take a while till the rules are refreshed, and if you don't want to wait, you can go ahead and type pfctl-d. So you should be able to go to LAN firewall configuration. We'll disable this anti-lockout rule because we don't need it and it may potentially block some other access. So click save. Let me disable again the PF's firewall. Okay, cool. Now we'll go back to rules, to LAN. I will remove this rule and I also will remove this rule and apply the changes. So now on the LAN interface, everything will be blocked by default. Now I should also set a default route. Let me deactivate the firewall, and I should set a default gateway which will use interface WAN, and the gate will be 192.168.0.1, which is my home network gateway, and I will name it, let's say, home gateway. And I will disable the gateway monitoring, as this will send a continuous ping, and it doesn't like the name, so I should use underscore instead of minus. And from here, after this changes will be saved, I'll just use the home gateway as the default gateway. Now that we added everything that we need, and we added a firewall rule that will allow us not to be blocked, I will go ahead and go to general setup, and I have already have the DNS servers, but from the DNS resolution behavior I will select use remote DNS servers and ignore the local ones. I will click save. Let's deactivate also the firewall again. Now what I want to do, I want to go to advanced, and I want to go to enable secure shell. I want to enable the SSH access to this device. I will click save. And another pfctl-d to disable the firewall, and I have enabled the secure shell. Now what I want to do is go ahead and reboot the Pfsense, because then for some reason the Pfsense will need a reboot after changing the initial settings so it can work correctly, and for me to not to have to disable the pfctl-d every time. So after I added all the initial setup rules and IPs and firewall rules and DNS server, and basically after I did everything what I showed you, we'll have to reboot the Pfsense. Now that the Pfsense is rebooted, I should be able to access the web management again without deactivating the firewall every time. So as you can see, now the initial setup is done, and we can go ahead and configure the interfaces for our topology.